The afternoon sun was shining gently over Tokyo, and inside a tall glass building, one of the richest men in Japan was preparing to sign one of the most important contracts of his life. His name was Mr. Takahashi, a billionaire known for his intelligence, his vision, and his power. People respected him, and some feared him. But in business, everyone wanted to stand by his side. On this day, the long conference table in his office was filled with confident businessmen. They wore expensive suits and spoke smoothly, their voices calm, but their eyes sharp. They had been negotiating with Mr. Takahashi for weeks, and finally, today was the day the contract would be signed. The deal was worth $500 million. Too many people. That was an impossible number to imagine. But for billionaires like Mr. Takahashi, it was part of daily life. Still, even for him, it was huge. This deal could change the future of his company, possibly the future of thousands of people who worked under him. The men sitting across from him smiled politely. They spoke with confidence, showing slides, documents, and graphs. Everything looked perfect. Every word was polished. Every number was carefully explained. They made the deal sound like a golden opportunity. Mr. Takahashi listened quietly. He was a man of few words. He nodded when needed, asked short questions, and leaned back in his chair as his sharp eyes scanned the documents. Nothing seemed out of place. The contract was thick, filled with legal terms, yet everything appeared in order. Yet, while the businessmen smiled and praised their own work, something silent entered the room. A presence so small, so ordinary that nobody paid attention at first. The door opened quietly, and a maid stepped inside. She held a tray with tea. Her hands steady, though her eyes lowered with respect. Her name was Aisha. She had been working in the billionaire's mansion for years, and sometimes she was asked to come to the office as well. For her, serving tea was nothing unusual. She walked carefully, making sure not a single drop spilled. But this time, she was not alone. Behind her walked her young son, no older than 10. He held her hand as they entered, shyly hiding behind her long skirt. The boy's name was Malik. His mother had no choice but to bring him with her that day because she couldn't leave him alone at home. The room was filled with powerful men, their suits shining, their voices heavy with authority. Malik's small eyes widened as he looked at them. He had never seen such a serious meeting before. He didn't understand the numbers, the charts, or the big words, but his eyes were sharp. He noticed things that others ignored. Aisha placed the tray on the table and began pouring tea for each guest. Her movements were careful, almost invisible. She was used to being unnoticed, and she preferred it that way. The less people saw her, the better. But Malik was not invisible. His big, curious eyes kept moving around the room, scanning the table, the documents, the men's faces. He was a child, but he was not foolish. Children often see things adults overlook. He noticed how one of the businessmen quickly turned a page as if hiding something. He noticed how another man avoided Mr. Takahashi's eyes when a certain paragraph was read aloud. And then, Malik noticed the contract itself. The papers were thick, full of printed words, but one page was slightly darker, as if replaced. Another had a sentence that seemed longer than the others. Malik couldn't read all the words. Many were too big for him. But something about the paper felt wrong. He tugged at his mother's sleeve, but she gave him a quick look that said, "Not now." She didn't want him to disturb anyone. For her, keeping quiet was survival. The businessmen continued speaking. Mr. Takahashi, one of them, said smoothly, "This deal will secure your company's future for the next 20 years. With us by your side, your empire will only grow stronger." Mr. Takahashi nodded slowly. He was impressed, but not fully convinced. Years of business had taught him one thing: never trust a deal that looks too perfect. Still, even he couldn't see what Malik had already noticed. The boy shifted uncomfortably. His small fingers twisted together. He looked again at the contract. His heart beat faster, though he didn't know why. Children have instincts adults sometimes lose. And Malik's instincts screamed that something was hidden in those pages. Finally, Mr. Takahashi reached for his pen. The businessmen leaned forward, their smiles growing wider. The moment of victory was close. Billions were about to move across hands with one signature. But just then, Malik whispered softly to his mother. His voice was barely a breath. "Mom, that's not what the paper says." Aisha froze. The tray in her hand almost slipped. She turned her head slightly, her eyes wide with fear. Did her son just speak during this powerful meeting? She wanted to scold him, to tell him to stay quiet. But her heart also felt a strange pull. The room continued as if nothing had happened. Nobody heard the boy's words except his mother. But Malik was not done. He tugged her sleeve again, his voice firmer this time. "Mom, it's not the same. Something is wrong." Aisha's hands trembled. She quickly set the tray down and bowed her head, pretending nothing happened. She hoped no one noticed. But inside, she was torn. Should she believe her son? He was just a child. What could he know about contracts worth $500 million? And yet, she had seen this look in his eyes before. Malik had always been different. He noticed things, details others ignored. He was quiet, but sharp, observant beyond his years. Mr. Takahashi lowered his pen for a moment. Something about the maid's movement caught his eye. He was a man who noticed small changes, and he saw her trembling hands, her worried face. And the way the boy pulled at her, he narrowed his eyes. "Is something the matter?" he asked in his deep, calm voice. The entire room went silent. The businessmen stiffened, confused. Aisha's face turned pale. She quickly bowed again. "No, sir. Nothing at all. Please forgive us." But Malik, innocent and fearless in his honesty, spoke up again. This time louder. His small voice echoed in the silent room. "That's not what the contract says." The room froze after the boy's words. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The air itself seemed to stop. The businessmen looked at each other, confused. Mr. Takahashi's sharp eyes narrowed, and Aisha felt her heart drop into her stomach. Her son's words echoed in her mind. That's not what the contract says. She wanted to grab his hand, to silence him, to apologize for his boldness. She knew the danger of speaking out of place. In rooms filled with power, even small mistakes could be punished. And this was not just any meeting. This was a deal worth $500 million. Aisha lowered her head, her voice trembling. "Forgive him, sir. He's only a child. He does not understand." But Malik did not look guilty. He stood straight, his young eyes firm. He did not flinch under the weight of the rich men's gazes. One of the businessmen finally laughed, though it sounded forced. "A child," he said, shaking his head. "Mr. Takahashi, surely you will not let a boy distract you from this important deal." Another leaned forward, his smile tight. "The boy cannot even read such documents." "Let us continue." But Mr. Takahashi did not move. His pen rested on the table. His eyes shifted between the maid, her trembling hands, and the boy's steady gaze. Something about the boy's words stayed in his mind. He had built his empire by paying attention to small details. A gesture, a pause, a mistake in tone. He noticed them all. And now, in the middle of a deal too perfect to be true, a small boy dared to speak against it. The silence stretched. Aisha felt sweat on her forehead. Her heart raced so fast, she thought everyone could hear it. She whispered again, desperately, "Please, sir." He meant no harm. But Mr. Takahashi leaned forward. His voice was calm but sharp. What did he mean then? Aisha's breath caught. Her hands tightened around Malik's shoulders, as if she could shield him from the storm. She wished she could disappear. She wished her son had stayed silent. But Malik, innocent and fearless in his truth, spoke again. "It is different." The words, "They are not the same." The men across the table exchanged nervous glances. One of them quickly interrupted. "Mr. Takahashi, this is nonsense." The boy is confused. "Please let us proceed." Time is valuable, but Mr. Takahashi raised a hand, silencing them. His eyes stayed on the child. "Which words?" he asked slowly. Aisha's knees weakened. Her voice broke as she pleaded. "Please, sir. He is just a child. But the billionaire ignored her. His gaze never left Malik. The boy stepped forward slightly, pointing at the thick stack of papers on the table. His small finger touched one of the middle pages. There, that line. It is different. The businessmen shifted uncomfortably. One of them forced a laugh. He cannot even read legal language. This is absurd. But Mr. Takahashi's instincts, honed by years of business, whispered something else. Children did not lie with such confidence. Children saw what adults overlooked. He pushed the papers forward. "Show me," he commanded. The room went still again. Aisha's hands shook as she pulled her son back, whispering urgently in his ear. "Enough, Malik. Please, don't say another word." But it was too late. The boy's words had planted doubt. And doubt in business was dangerous. The room felt heavier than before. The laughter of the businessmen faded, replaced with a nervous silence. The boy's words, simple yet sharp, still hung in the air. Malik sat quietly now, his small body pressed close to his mother. He didn't speak again, but his eyes told another story. They were fixed on the contract, scanning each page as if he could see something no one else could. Aisha kept her head lowered, her heart still racing. She prayed the moment would pass. She wanted the meeting to continue, for her son's words to be forgotten, erased from everyone's memory. She knew her place. She was only a maid. Was to serve tea, not interfere in matters of millions and billions. But the boy, he was different. He did not carry her fear. He did not carry her silence. Mr. Takahashi leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. He did not rush. He studied the boy the way he studied every deal, carefully, patiently, searching for the hidden truth. The businessmen shifted uncomfortably. One of them cleared his throat. "Sir, this is a waste of time. The boy is staring at papers he cannot even read. Let us proceed." But Mr. Takahashi raised a hand again, stopping him. His sharp eyes turned back to Malik. "Why do you think the words are different?" he asked softly. Malik swallowed, his voice almost a whisper. "Because the page looks strange. The letters are not the same size. Some are darker. Some are smaller." The room grew colder. A child had noticed something that 10 grown men, dressed in their finest suits, had failed to see, or pretended not to see. One of the businessmen laughed nervously. "Children imagine things. He's only guessing." But Mr. Takahashi did not laugh. His gaze grew sharper. He reached for the papers again, flipping through them slowly. His trained eyes looked closer this time, deeper, searching for what the child had seen. Malik's small fingers twitched, as if he wanted to point again, but fear of his mother's warning kept him still. He stayed quiet now, just watching everything, watching everyone. And the more he watched, the more he saw. He saw how one man's hand gripped the edge of his chair too tightly. He saw another man's eyes dart quickly away when Mr. Takahashi's fingers paused at a certain paragraph. He saw the sweat forming on the back of a neck that was calm only moments before. The boy said nothing. But his silence spoke louder than words. The billion-dollar meeting had shifted. The power in the room no longer belonged to the smooth-talking businessmen. It had quietly moved into the small hands of a child who only watched. And though Malik stayed silent now, his sharp eyes promised one thing. He would not let this go unnoticed. The clock ticked softly on the wall, sound almost lost in the thick silence of the room. Mr. Takahashi's pen rested near the paper, but he did not lift it. His sharp eyes moved slowly across the contract again, line by line. The businessmen sat stiffly in their chairs. Their polished smiles were beginning to crack. Each second that passed without the billionaire's signature felt like a rope tightening around their throats. Aisha stood near the table, her hands folded in front of her, her head bowed. On the outside she looked calm, but inside her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might burst. She glanced down at her son. Malik's small hands clutched her skirt, his eyes still fixed on the papers. His face was serious, far too serious for a boy his age. She bent slightly toward him and whispered urgently, "Enough, Malik. Please, no more." But the boy did not look away from the table. His voice came out in a soft murmur, barely loud enough for her alone to hear. "Mom, It is wrong. The paper is wrong. Her stomach tightened. Fear spread through her chest like ice. Did he not understand? These were powerful men. They controlled more money in one deal than she could ever dream of in 100 lifetimes. A single word out of place could destroy their lives. Quiet, she begged him again, her voice trembling. You don't understand, but Malik's eyes, filled with an unusual fire for someone so young, lifted to hers. I do understand. He will lose everything if he signs. Her breath caught. How could a child speak with such certainty? She shook her head quickly, hoping to silence him. But the damage was already done, because in that quiet whisper, Mr. Takahashi had caught a glimpse of something. He noticed how the maid bent low, how the boy's lips moved, and how her eyes filled with panic. The billionaire leaned forward, his deep voice calm but cutting through the room like a blade. What is he telling you? The businessmen shifted uncomfortably. One of them chuckled, though the sound was dry and forced. Sir, you are listening to the whispers of servants and children? The papers are ready, but Mr. Takahashi did not look at them. His sharp eyes stayed locked on the boy. Aisha froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She could not answer. She wanted to protect her son, to keep him from saying more, but she knew it was useless now. The attention of the most powerful man in the room was on them. Malik, small but steady, finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but in the silence, carried far. That's not what the contract says. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. The businessmen stiffened, their faces hardening. Their smiles had vanished completely. One of them slammed his hand lightly against the table.
Wow, this is ridiculous. A child should not even be in this room, but it was too late. The risky whisper had become a dangerous truth.
Mr. Takahashi leaned back slowly, his eyes never leaving the boy. For the first time, the billionaire was no longer thinking about the deal in front of him. He was thinking about the child who dared to speak, and deep inside, a seed of doubt began to grow. The room was silent. Mr. Takahashi's hand no longer touched the pen. It rested flat on the polished table, still and unmoving. His dark eyes, sharp as a blade, were locked on the small boy standing beside his mother. A child had dared to speak, servant's son. And yet his words carried more weight than the speeches of the rich men sitting across the table. The businessmen tried to recover. One of them leaned forward, forcing a confident smile. Sir, please. The boy is mistaken. These contracts are filled with complicated terms. Even we as professionals needed time to understand them. How could a child notice anything important? Another man joined in quickly, his voice a little too fast. Yes, yes. It is foolish to give attention to the imagination of a boy. He has distracted us long enough. Please let us finish. But Mr. Takahashi did not reply. His silence was louder than words. He studied the men carefully. For the first time, he noticed something strange. Sweat at the edge of a collar. Nervous hands adjusting a tie, a fake smile that trembled. The billionaire's suspicion grew. He turned his eyes back to the maid. Aisha stood frozen, her head bowed, her hands clutched tightly around her son's shoulders. She looked terrified, as if she wished the ground would open and swallow them whole. But the boy did not look away. Malik's eyes were steady, watching everything. Mr. Takahashi leaned forward, his deep voice breaking the silence. What exactly is different in the contract? Aisha gasped softly. She whispered quickly, Sir, please forgive him. He does not know what he says. He's only a child. But Takahashi ignored her. His gaze did not leave Malik. Answer me. The boy hesitated. His small chest rose and fell. Then he lifted a shaky finger and pointed toward the stack of papers. There, the line in the middle. The words are not the same. They want to take more than you think. The businessmen instantly erupted. This is absurd, one shouted. Cannot even read properly. Another snapped. Sir Takahashi. With all respect, this is wasting valuable time. Their voices overlapped, desperate to drown out the boy. But the billionaire raised a single hand. The room fell silent again. His voice was calm, but it carried steel. Bring me the page you pointed at. One of his assistants quickly slid the contract across the table. Mr. Takahashi pulled the papers closer, flipping to the section Malik had indicated. His eyes scanned the words carefully. At first, everything looked ordinary. But then he paused. There it was. A small paragraph, hidden in legal language, written slightly differently from the rest. The font was smaller, almost unnoticeable, and in that small difference a dangerous sentence was buried, a transfer of controlling rights. Disguised as a harmless clause, his chest tightened. Had he signed just a few minutes earlier, $500 million? And, more importantly, control of his empire would have slipped from his hands. Slowly, Mr. Takahashi looked up. His eyes were colder now, sharper, carrying a storm inside them. The businessmen shifted in their seats. Their smiles had vanished. Fear began to show on their faces. The billionaire spoke, his voice low but deadly clear. "You tried to deceive me." The words struck like thunder. And in that moment, he realized something even more shocking. His savior was not one of his trusted lawyers, not his advisors, not even his closest partners. It was a maid's son. A child who had seen what no one else dared to notice. The air inside the room turned. Heavy. Mr. Takahashi's sharp eyes had already spotted the hidden line in the contract. The line Malik had bravely pointed out. The businessmen knew it too. Their faces, once full of pride and confidence, now carried traces of panic. But fear quickly turned into anger. One of them slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising. "This is outrageous. We spent months preparing this deal, and now you. Waste our time listening to a child?" Other leaned forward, his face red. "A boy? A maid's son? Are we really to believe his nonsense, overtrained professionals? This is insulting." The third man sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Mr. Takahashi, surely you do not think a child has found something your own lawyers missed. Be reasonable." Aisha trembled. She pulled Malik closer to her as if trying to shield him from their fury. Her heart raced with fear. She had never heard men of such power raise their voices like this. Each word felt like a storm crashing against her and her son. Malik, however, stood still. His small face was pale, but his eyes did not lower. He looked at the men with quiet strength, as if he already knew their anger was only proof of their guilt. Mr. Takahashi did not move. He let them speak, let their anger fill the room. But his silence was more dangerous than their shouts. Finally, he raised his hand. The voices stopped instantly. His calm voice cut through the air. "Why are you so afraid of a child's words? If the contract is clean, then you have nothing to fear." The businessmen exchanged nervous glances. Their anger faltered for a moment. One of them tried again, his voice trembling beneath the surface. He misunderstood. "It is only a technical phrase. A phrase that gives you controlling rights over my company? Do you call that unimportant?" The men fell silent. Their faces hardened, but their eyes betrayed them. For the first time, the power in the room shifted. The mighty businessman who had walked in with confident smiles and smooth words, beside his mother, had turned their perfect plan into chaos. Mr. Takahashi leaned back in his chair, his voice steady but sharp as steel. "You thought you could fool me? But you forgot one thing. Truth can come from anywhere, even from the mouth of a child." The businessmen clenched their jaws. Their anger was no longer loud. It had turned into something darker, silent fury mixed with fear of being exposed. And in that silence, the battle for power had already begun. The room was like a storm about to break. The businessmen sat stiffly in their chairs, their anger burning under their skin. Their perfect smiles had collapsed, replaced by nervous glares. Mr. Takahashi leaned back, his sharp eyes fixed on them. His silence was heavy, the kind of silence that demanded truth. Then, without warning, a small voice broke the tension. It was Malik. He stepped forward from behind his mother, his little hands shaking slightly, but his face steady. His eyes looked directly at the papers lying on the table. "It's there," he said softly. "In the middle part, the line says you will take more than half of his company." The words fell like a stone into a still pond, sending ripples through the room. Aisha gasped and quickly grabbed her son's hand. "Malik, no," she whispered, her heart pounding. She wanted to pull him back, to silence him, to make this dangerous moment disappear. But Malik didn't stop. His voice grew firmer. It's hidden. The letters are smaller. But it says you will take what does not belong to you. The businessmen erupted instantly. This is nonsense. One of them shouted, he is lying. Another snapped. How could a child even understand this? His hand moved slowly across the contract, his eyes scanning the line Malik pointed to. His chest tightened as he read it again. The boy was right. The words were simple on the surface, but the meaning was deadly clear. The moment he signed, he would lose control. The billionaire lifted his gaze. His eyes were colder than ice now. Is this what you call a partnership? He asked quietly. The businessmen froze. None of them dared to answer. Malik stood silently now, his small voice already spoken, his truth delivered. He looked up at the billionaire, not with fear, but with the innocence of a child who only wanted to stop something wrong. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. She clutched her son tightly, torn between fear for his safety and pride in his courage. The room was no longer under the control of the smooth-talking businessmen. It belonged to the truth. And the truth had been spoken by a child. The room was quiet again, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Mr. Takahashi's fingers pressed firmly against the contract. He read every word, slowly, carefully. His sharp eyes narrowed when he reached the hidden line. There it was, exactly as Malik had said. The letters were small, written in a way that looked harmless, almost boring. But the meaning was clear. Once he signed. The businessmen would not only share profits, they would own him. It was not a deal. It was a trap. Mr. Takahashi's jaw tightened. His face showed no anger, but the fire in his eyes was enough to make even powerful men tremble. The businessmen shifted nervously in their seats. One of them coughed, another forced a smile. It is nothing. Just a legal adjustment, a standard phrase. You must trust us. But Mr. Takahashi's voice cut through their excuses like a blade. Trust is earned. And you tried to steal it. The businessmen's faces darkened. Their masks of confidence were breaking. One leaned forward quickly, trying to recover control. It's Takahashi. With all respect, you are misunderstanding. You meant no harm. The boy. His small hands clutched his mother's dress, but his eyes were firm. I'm not confused, he said quietly. I know what I saw. No. You wanted to trick him? Aisha's heart skipped. She feared her son's boldness. His tall figure cast a long shadow across the table. He thought I would not see this. He thought money and power would blind me. But you were wrong. He closed the folder with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the room like a final judgment. The businessmen looked at one another in panic. Their deal was collapsing before their eyes, and worse, it was collapsing because of a child. Anger flickered in their eyes, but beneath the anger, there was something else to fear. Fear of being exposed. Fear of losing everything, mister. Takahashi's voice was calm but cold. The truth always shows itself, no matter how small the letters, no matter how carefully you hide it. And with those words, the balance of power shifted completely. The air inside the meeting room grew darker. The deal was broken, but the businessmen were not ready to give up. One of them leaned forward, his eyes sharp. His voice was low, almost a growl. Mr. Takahashi, you don't understand. This deal is bigger than you. Refusing us will bring consequences. The words fell heavy in the room. Aisha froze. She pulled Malik closer, her heart pounding. She had seen powerful men angry before, but this was different. Their voices carried danger now. Another man spoke, his tone colder. Walk away now, and your empire will crumble. You can make it happen. Malik's small hand gripped his mother's tightly. His eyes widened, but he did not look away. He watched the men carefully, studying their faces, the way their smiles were gone, replaced with something cruel. Mr. Takahashi did not flinch. His gaze remained calm, but his silence was more frightening than their threats. Finally, he spoke. His voice was steady like stone. Now you try to scare me with words. The businessmen's faces hardened. One of them slammed his hand on the table. You don't know who we are? We control more than you can imagine. If you refuse us, you and everyone who helps you will suffer. The words echoed in the room. Aisha's breath caught. She held her son close, terrified that their anger might fall upon him. But Malik, though afraid, whispered softly, almost to himself. Bad men always show their faces in the end. Mr. Takahashi heard him. His eyes softened for a moment as he looked at the boy. Then his gaze returned to the businessman sharp. Unshaken? You threaten me, he said coldly, because you have already lost. The businessmen froze, their anger boiling beneath the surface. They had failed to fool him, and now their only weapon was fear. But fear did not work here. It's not anymore. The boy had spoken the truth, and the billionaire had listened. The businessman's words still echoed in the room like poison. Threats, anger, pride, everything they had built their lives on was now spilling out in desperation. Aisha stood frozen, clutching Malik's hand. She could feel the child's small fingers trembling, but his eyes were still steady. Watching the powerful men without blinking, Mr. Takahashi did not reply right away. Instead, he walked slowly to the window. His back faced the table, his hands folded behind him. The city stretched wide below, its lights glowing against the night sky. For a moment, the billionaire seemed lost in thought. The businessmen exchanged quick glances. We can still turn this. Another leaned forward, forcing a smile that looked more like a snarl. Sir, we are not enemies. Think carefully. This contract will make you richer than ever. Don't throw it away because of a child's imagination. The words a child hit Aisha like a knife. She wanted to cry out, to protect Malik from their scorn, but her voice would not come. Mr. Takahashi turned slowly. His face was calm, unreadable. The men sat straighter, waiting for his answer. He walked back to the table, picked up the contract, and held it in his hands. For a long moment, he stared at the papers. Then, without a word, he tore them in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed in the room like thunder. The businessmen froze. Their eyes widened in shock. You, one of them stammered, do you realize what you've done? But Mr. Takahashi did not answer them. He looked only at Malik. The boy's eyes widened. For the first time, a small, relieved smile appeared on his face. Aisha covered her mouth, her heart racing. She could not believe what she had just seen. The billionaire placed the torn contract back on the table. His voice was low but strong. No amount of money is worth selling my soul. The businessmen sat in stunned silence. Their perfect plan had shattered, not because of lawyers or advisors, but because of a boy who dared to speak. And now, the decision was made. The torn contract lay on the table like a dead snake. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the air conditioner. Then, silence cracked. One of the businessmen shot to his feet, his face red with fury. You fool, he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. Do you know what you've done? You will regret this. Another slammed his fist on the table so hard that glasses rattled. You insult us. We gave you the chance of a lifetime, and you throw it away for the words of a child? Their voices grew louder, sharper, filled with venom. Aisha flinched, pulling Malik closer into her arms. Her heart pounded, afraid their anger might spill over onto her son. Malik, though small, did not hide his face. His eyes stayed on the men, steady and calm. His lips pressed tightly, as if he already understood bad men always grow louder when they lose. The third businessman leaned across the table, pointing a trembling finger at Mr. Takahashi. You think you are untouchable? You think tearing that paper saves you? We will crush you. Every door will close for you. Every partner will walk away. You will stand alone, but the billionaire's face remained calm, carved from stone. He let their anger crash against him, like waves against a cliff, unmoving, unshaken. Finally, he spoke. His voice was soft, but it cut through their shouting like a blade. Men who build their lives on lies are already broken. The businessmen froze, their words caught in their throats. His quiet strength silenced them more than shouting ever could. They glared at him, hatred burning in their eyes. One whispered under his breath, his voice cold and dangerous. This is not the end. You'll pay for this. Aisha's stomach turned. She hugged Malik tightly, terrified that their rage might spill over into violence. But Mr. Takahashi did not flinch. He looked at the boy once more, then back at the men. "Leave," he said firmly. The command struck like thunder. The businessmen stared at him in shock, their pride torn apart. For a moment, it seemed as if they might refuse. But then, one by one, they gathered their papers and stood. Their steps were heavy, their anger still boiling. But their power in that room was gone. They left without looking back. The door closed behind them, and silence returned. But it was a different silence, now lighter, calmer. For the first time that night, the storm had begun to fade. The heavy door clicked shut behind the businessmen. Their footsteps faded into the distance. Leaving only silence inside the grand room, Aisha let out a shaky breath she didn't know she had been holding. Her arms were still wrapped tightly around Malik. She could feel his small heart racing against her chest, but Malik lifted his head. His eyes, though tired, still carried the same quiet courage. Mr. Takahashi stood motionless near the table. The torn contract still lay there, its pieces scattered like the ruins of a trap. His sharp eyes softened as he looked at the boy. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the billionaire broke the silence. His deep voice was calm but filled with something rare respect. "You saved me tonight." Aisha's eyes widened. She quickly bowed her head. "No, sir, please, forgive him. He should not have spoken. He is only a child." But Takahashi shook his head slowly. A child who saw what no one else dared to see. He walked closer, his tall frame towering over them. Yet his presence no longer felt cold or distant. It felt protective. He knelt slightly, lowering himself to Malik's level. The boy looked up at him, surprised. "Tell me," Takahashi asked softly, "how did you notice the words?" Malik hesitated. His small voice carried honesty. I like to read. When Mama cleans, I read papers people leave behind. The letters here were smaller. They looked wrong, so I looked closer." The billionaire's eyes narrowed not in anger, but in thought. He was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You have a gift," he said firmly. "Eyes that see the truth." Aisha's throat tightened. Tears welled in her eyes. Never before had anyone spoken to her son with such honor. She bowed quickly, her voice trembling. "Sir, thank you, but please, forget this night. We want no trouble?" But Takahashi's voice grew stronger. "No, I will not forget. You must not forget either. Tonight a boy's courage saved an empire." His words hung in the air, powerful and unforgettable. Malik blinked, unsure how to respond. Slowly, he gave a small smile, the first true smile of the night. For the first time, Aisha's heart felt lighter. The danger had not fully passed, but in that moment, she knew her son's voice had been heard. The storm had revealed something no wealth or power could buy, truth spoken by a child. The room was calmer now. But the calm felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at any moment. Aisha gently guided Malik toward the corner of the room, her arms still protectively around him. She wanted nothing more than to take her son home, away from the eyes of power and danger. Mr. Takahashi remained by the table, his gaze fixed on the torn contract. His mind was sharp, but deep inside, he knew the battle was far from over. The businessmen had left, but their words still echoed. "This is not the end. You'll pay for this." He clenched his fist. Men like them never gave up quietly. They would strike again. Suddenly the door creaked open. Everyone turned sharply. One of Takahashi's loyal assistants stepped inside, his face pale. He hurried to the billionaire's side and whispered urgently, "Sir." The men who just left, they were not alone. Our security saw them speaking with strangers in the parking area. "Armed men?" Aisha gasped, pulling Malik close. Her heart nearly stopped. Takahashi's eyes narrowed. His voice was calm, but it carried steel. "So, they dare to threaten me even outside these walls." The assistant nodded nervously. "Should I call for the police?" But the billionaire shook his head. "No, men like them have ways to twist the law. For now, we stay alert." His eyes shifted toward Malik and Aisha. For the first time, Concern appeared on his face. "They will not forget what happened here," he said quietly. "And they know who ruined their plan." Aisha's blood ran cold. She understood what those words meant. She held her son tighter, whispering a silent prayer. Malik, however, looked up at the billionaire with steady eyes. "They're angry because they were caught," he said softly. "Bad men always come back, but good people don't hide." Takahashi stared at the boy, his chest tightening. There was something rare in this child and innocence, mixed with unshakable courage. The billionaire placed a hand gently on Malik's shoulder. "You are right," he said firmly. "And I promise you no harm will come to you or your mother while I still breathe." Isha's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she believed him. But deep inside, all three of them knew this was only the beginning. The storm was not over. It was waiting outside the door. The meeting was over. But the tension followed them like a shadow. Mr. Takahashi left the tall glass building with Aisha and Malik close behind. Security guards surrounded them, their eyes scanning every corner of the dark parking lot. The night was cold, the city lights distant, but the air carried a strange heaviness like danger was watching. Aisha's grip on Malik's hand tightened. She had never felt fear like this before. Every sound, the echo of footsteps, the slam of a car door, even the rush of wind made her heart jump. Malik, though small, tried to be brave. He stayed close to his mother, his eyes darting around. Watching the shadows, Takahashi walked calmly, but inside he was alert. He knew men like those businessmen. They did not accept defeat quietly. Their threats were not empty. As they reached the black car waiting at the end of the lot, one of the guards spoke quickly into his radio. "Sir, we saw movement near the exit gate. 2 cars. Tinted windows." Aisha's chest tightened. She pulled Malik into her arms. "Ya Allah," she whispered under her breath. Takahashi's face darkened. He opened the car door himself and gestured firmly. "Get inside." Quickly, the guards moved into position, their hands close to their weapons. The sound of engines starting echoed through the lot. 2 black vehicles rolled slowly toward them, their headlights slicing through the night. Aisha's breath caught. Malik gripped her hand tighter. The cars did not stop. They crawled closer, their engines low and threatening, like predators circling prey. One of the guards shouted, "Stay back!" But the cars kept moving. Takahashi stepped forward slightly, his tall figure standing like a shield in front of Aisha and Malik. His voice was steady, commanding. "If you think fear will break me, you are wrong." The black cars paused for a moment. Their engines rumbled. Then, without warning, they sped away into the night, tires screeching against the pavement. The silence that followed was heavy. Aisha's knees felt weak. She held Malik tightly, whispering a prayer of thanks. Malik buried his face against her, but when he looked up, his small voice carried courage. "They were watching us, but they're afraid now." Takahashi turned to the boy, his eyes softening. He placed a hand on his shoulder. They should be. The night was not safe. But something had changed. Takahashi was no longer just a billionaire protecting his empire. He was a man who had taken responsibility for a boy's courage and a mother's fear. And from that moment, their lives were tied together. The night silence lingered as the cars disappeared into the distance. The parking lot felt emptier, but the weight of danger still pressed on everyone's chest. Aisha sat in the car with Malik close to her. She held his small hands in hers, her heart aching with fear and pride at the same time. He was just a boy, yet his voice had shaken powerful men. Malik leaned against her shoulder, whispering softly, "Mama, did I make things worse?" Her throat tightened. She kissed his forehead. "No, my son. You told the truth. The truth is never wrong." Across from them, Mr. Takahashi sat quietly. His eyes were sharp, but his thoughts were deep. He had faced rivals, scandals, and betrayals before, but this was different. This was personal. For the first time in years, he had not been saved by money, lawyers, or strategy. He had been saved by honesty, by a child who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. The car moved through the city, its tinted windows hiding them from prying eyes. The guards' vehicles followed close behind. Finally, Takahashi spoke. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. You are no longer just a maid and her son in my house. From this day forward, you are under my protection. Aisha's eyes widened. She lowered her head respectfully, unsure how to respond. Sir, you owe us nothing. We are simple people. Please, let us leave quietly. But Takahashi shook his head. His gaze hardened, not at her, but at the memory of the businessmen's threats. No, they will come again, and they will not stop with me. They will seek revenge on anyone who stood in their way. That means you. And the boy. Aisha shivered. She pulled Malik closer. The thought of men like that targeting her son made her knees weak. Malik, however, raised his head. His voice was small, but it carried surprising courage. I'm not afraid. You didn't sign. They lost. Takahashi looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly a faint smile touched his stern face. You remind me of myself. Long ago, he leaned forward slightly, his tone firm and unshakable. I give you my word. No harm will come to you. As long as I live, you are safe. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. For years, she had fought alone to protect her son. Tonight, for the first time, someone powerful had stood beside them. The car drove on into the night. The city lights blurred past the windows, but inside the car, something new was born. Trust. The boy had spoken the truth. The billionaire had listened, and now he had made an oath that would change all their lives forever. The night had been long. Shadows of danger still lingered, but as the first light of dawn touched the city's skyline, a strange calm filled the air. Inside his mansion, Mr. Takahashi stood by the wide glass windows. His sharp eyes watched the sunrise, but his thoughts were not on the view. They were on the boy who had saved him from ruin. Behind him, Aisha sat quietly with Malik, waiting. She was still uneasy. Every word the businessmen had spoken, every threat they had made, still echoed in her heart. But her son was different. Malik's eyes were bright, as if he had already moved past the fear. Finally, Takahashi turned. His tall figure carried authority, but his face was softer now. He looked directly at Aisha. You feared tonight? And you were right to fear. But you must know this, I do not break my word. You and your son are under my protection now. Aisha bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. Sir, we are just servants. You owe us nothing. But Takahashi shook his head. I owe him everything. His eyes rested on Malik. Without his voice, I would have signed my empire away. $500 million, my company, my people gone in a single stroke of ink. He walked closer, his voice firm. Money can be replaced. Power can be rebuilt. But truth is priceless. And your son reminded me of that. Malik blinked, his small hands folded together. I only said what I saw. The billionaire smiled faintly. And that is what makes it so powerful. For a moment, the room was silent. Only the morning birds could be heard outside. Then Takahashi spoke again, his voice carrying a weight that felt like destiny. From today, your lives will change. Not because you asked for it, but because you earned it. Malik will study in the best schools. He will have every opportunity. And you, Aisha, will no longer work as a maid. You will stand in my house as a respected guest. Aisha's hands trembled. She had never imagined words like these spoken to her. She held her son tightly, whispering, Allah is merciful. Malik's eyes widened. I can go to school? Takahashi knelt slightly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Yes, and one day you will grow strong. You will see more truths. And perhaps you will protect others just as you protected me. Tears filled Aisha's eyes. She pressed her forehead against Malik's, her heart overflowing with gratitude. For years she had fought to give him a better life. Tonight, her son's honesty had opened a door she never thought possible. But beneath the gratitude, a shadow still lingered. She knew the businessmen were not finished. Their threats were not empty. Takahashi sensed her fear. His voice grew sharp again. They will come back. Men like them never forgive. But let them try. They will not succeed. He turned toward the window once more, the rising sun casting a golden glow on his face. His eyes were steady, ready. They underestimated a child, he said firmly, and that was their greatest mistake. Malik smiled softly. Bad men always lose in the end. Aisha hugged him, her tears falling freely now. The fear of last night was still fresh, but real hope had finally entered her heart, and as the first light of morning filled the mansion, it felt like more than just a new day. It was the dawn of a new beginning.